and new ideas. The imperial system. The British imperial system was based on the principle that one of the colony's most important functions was to provide wealth to the home country. This imperial system was a closed system designed to keep competition out. Mercantilism. Mercantilism is an economic theory about the world economy. Mercantilists believed that to become wealthy, a country must acquire gold and silver. A country could do this by selling more goods to other countries than it bought from them. This would cause more gold and silver to flow into the country than flowed out to pay products from other countries. Mercantilists also argued that a country should be self-sufficient in raw materials. If it had to buy raw materials from another country, gold and silver would flow out to pay for them. Thus, to be self-sufficient, a country needed colonies where raw materials were available. The home country would then buy raw materials from its colonies and sell them manufactured goods in return. Mercantilism provided some benefits to colonies. It gave them a reliable market for some of the raw materials and an eager supplier of manufactured goods they needed. Mercantilism also had drawbacks, however. It prevented colonies from selling goods to other nations, even if they could get a better price. Furthermore, if a colony produced nothing the home country needed, it could not acquire gold or silver to buy manufactured goods. The Navigation Acts. When Charles II assumed the throne in 1660, he and his advisors were determined to generate wealth for England in America. They established policies based on mercantilist ideas. Beginning in 1660, the king asked Parliament to pass a series of navigation acts that imposed restrictions on colonial trade. These acts required that all goods shipped to and from the colonies be carried on English ships, including those built in the colonies, and listed specific products that could be sold only to England or other English colonies. Many of these goods, including sugar, tobacco, cotton, wool, and indigo, were the major products that earned money for the American colonies. Anger at the Navigation Acts encouraged colonies to break the new laws. New England merchants began smuggling goods to Europe, the Caribbean, and Africa. Dominion of New England. In 1685, King James II assumed the throne and took decisive action to end the smuggling. The colonial charters of some colonies had already been revoked, and in 1685, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine were merged into a new royal province called the Dominion of New England. The Dominion was to be governed by an English governor general appointed by the king. The following year, Plymouth, Rhode Island, and Connecticut were added to the Dominion, and by 1688, New York and New Jersey had been added as well. King James II appointed Sir Edmund Andros to be the Dominion's first Governor General. Andros became very unpopular because he levied new taxes and rigorously enforced the Navigation Acts. Equally disturbing to the Puritans were Andros's efforts to undermine their congregations. For example, he declared that only marriages performed in Anglican churches were legal. The Glorious Revolution. While Andros was angering New England colonies, the people of England were growing suspicious of their new king, James II. James offended many English people by disregarding Parliament, revoking town charters, prosecuting Anglican bishops, and practicing Catholicism. News of the birth of James's son in 1688 triggered a crisis. Opponents of James had been content to wait until he died because they expected his Protestant daughter, Mary, to succeed him. The son, however, was now first in line to the throne and would be raised Catholic. To prevent a Catholic dynasty, Parliament invited Mary and her Dutch husband, William of Orange, to claim the throne. James abdicated in what became known as the Glorious Revolution. Soon afterwards, the colonies ousted Governor-General Andros. William and Mary permitted Rhode Island and Connecticut to resume their previous forms of government, but in 1691 they merged Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, and Maine into the new royal colony of Massachusetts. The colony was headed by a governor appointed by the king, and the colonists were allowed to elect an assembly. Before assuming the throne, William and Mary had to swear their acceptance of the English Bill of Rights. This document, written in 1689, said monarchs could not suspend Parliament's laws or create their own courts, nor could they impose taxes or raise an army without Parliament's consent. The English Bill of Rights also guaranteed freedom of speech within Parliament, banned excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishments, and guaranteed every English subject the right to an impartial jury in legal cases. The ideas in this document would later help shape the United States Bill of Rights. The Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. During the 1700s, the English colonies came under the influence of Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. The former championed human reason, while the latter stressed a new personal relationship with God. Enlightenment thinkers. Enlightenment thinkers came to believe that natural laws apply to social, political, and economic relationships, and that people could figure out these natural laws if they employed reason. This emphasis on logic and reasoning was known as rationalism. One of the most influential Enlightenment writers was the political philosopher John Locke. His writings reflected lessons learned from glorious revolution, that there were times when revolution against the king could be justified. Locke's contract theory of government and natural rights profoundly influenced the thinking of future American political leaders. During these periods of turmoil, Locke published 2 treatises of government. In that work, Locke attempted to use reason to discover and explain the natural laws that apply to politics, the society, and why people created governments to safeguard those natural laws. 123. If man in the state of nature be so free, why will he part with his freedom? The employment of the property he has in this state is very unsafe, very unsecure. This makes him willing to join in society with others for the mutual preservation of their lives, liberties, and states. 192. For no government can have a right to obedience from a people who have not freely consented to it, which they can never be supposed to do, till they are put in a full state of liberty to choose their government. From the 2 treatises of government. Equally important was Locke's an essay concerning human understanding, in which he argued that people's minds were blank slates that could be shaped by society and education, making people better. These ideals that all people have rights and that society can be improved became core American beliefs, and beliefs that we still work toward today. Jean-Jacques Rousseau carried Locke's ideas further. In The Social Contract, he argued that a government should be formed by the consent of the people, who would then make their own laws. Another influential writer was Baron de Montesquieu. In The Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu suggested that there were 3 types of political power: executive, legislative, and judicial. These powers should be separated into different branches to protect people's liberty. In order to have this liberty, it is necessary the government be so constituted as one man need not be afraid of another. When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same body of magistrates, there can be no liberty. Again, there is no liberty if the judiciary power be not separated from the legislative and executive. Were it joined with the legislative, the life and liberty of the subject would be exposed to arbitrary control. for the judge would be then the legislator. Were it joined to the executive power, the judge might behave with violence and oppression from the spirit of the law. Religion. While some Americans turned away from a religious worldview, others renewed their Christian faith. Many Americans embraced a European religious movement called Pietism, which stressed an individual's piety, devoutness, and an emotional union with God. Throughout the colonies, ministers held religious revivals, large public meetings for preaching and prayer. This widespread resurgence of increased religious fervor became known as the Great Awakening. In 1734, a Massachusetts preacher named Jonathan Edwards helped launch the Great Awakening. In powerful, terrifying sermons, he argued that a person had to repent and convert. His emotional, as opposed to rational, style of preaching was typically of the fervor of the Great Awakening. George Whitefield, an Anglican minister from England, also attracted and inspired many of his listeners to lead a more religious life. The Great Awakening peaked around 1740. Those who embraced the new ideas, including Baptists, some Presbyterians, and Congregationalists, and a new group called Methodists, won many converts, while churches that held under traditional styles often lost members. The Enlightenment and the Great Awakening had different origins, but both profoundly affected colonial society. The Enlightenment provided arguments against British rule. The Great Awakening served to undermine allegiance to traditional authorities.